Hey everyone, this is Kristin from KristinCoaching.com, and thank you so much for joining me for my video today. We're going to be talking about red flags that you should not ignore in your relationship. Whether you're starting a new relationship or you've been in your relationship for a long time or somewhere in between, it's really important to not ignore certain behaviors and actions that your partner does in your relationship. Because if you ignore these things, most likely your level of dissatisfaction is going to go way down in your relationship. You're going to most likely have your anxiety increased in your relationship. You're going to feel frustrated. You're going to feel confused. Things are going to happen when it comes to these red flags that really degrade the integrity of the relationship and really struggle with you guys connecting on a higher level and therefore making your relationship as healthy and happy as possible. When red flags happen, certain things happen within us, whether we feel violated or hurt or disrespected or sad, whatever that is, we have to stop ignoring it, because if you ignore these things and ignore these signs, your relationship is just going to be unhealthier and unhealthier, and you're going to be more sad and more sad, and you don't want to do that, okay? So we're going to be talking about these red flags that I think are super important, that happen to a lot of people out there, that they just, either pretend doesn't happen, or they don't want to address, or maybe they don't know how to address. But we're going to be talking about these things, and I want you to see if any of these red flags pertain to you and your relationship. Okay, so let's get started. So the first red flag that you should never ignore is if your partner freaks out on you. That's number one. When I say freak out, I mean just going off the handle, yelling, cussing, getting super, super angry, degrading you, whatever that is. If you just feel that all of a sudden things were fine and that for whatever reason your partner gets really upset and just freaks out, that is definitely a red flag. Because if that happens a lot in your relationship, even if it just happens a few times, whatever that is, that can feel really scary, right? That can feel really vulnerable. It can feel really emotional and confusing. And it's just not a healthy dynamic to have if your partner is freaking out on you, okay? That's definitely a red flag that needs to be addressed as soon as possible in your relationship to make sure that that doesn't happen again. Red flag number two, your partner ignores you. So maybe your partner's mad at you. Maybe your partner says that you did something, whether you did or you didn't. If your partner is ignoring you and giving you the silent treatment, that is definitely a problem, because that's showing their inability to be able to address things with you, to resolve issues, to help solve issues as a team. And it's kind of, well, actually, I'm going to be honest, it's a pretty, I think, an immature behavior to do, to ignore someone, especially for a long period of time. It's one thing that if somebody needs some space to cool off, I don't really take that as ignoring. I take it as some, you need some space, you need your personal time to gather your thoughts. But ignoring is obvious when somebody does it, and it's usually for a prolonged amount of time. Hours, days, maybe even weeks, okay? So if your partner is ignoring you, definitely a red flag for your relationship, because that that shows a lack of communication. Number three, your partner is disrespectful to you. So is your partner calling you names? Is your partner making you feel really bad and really stupid? Is your partner saying degrading things towards you? Whatever it is, if your partner is disrespecting you, that's a problem, right? Because that's showing a hierarchy here. It's showing that they are putting themselves on a pedestal and trying to make you below that. Definitely a problem, right? Because we need to be equal in the relationship, okay? So if your partner is saying disrespectful things, then they're trying to make you feel low and putting you lower than them. And that's definitely a problem and a red flag. Number four. If your partner never blames themselves, that's a red flag. So that's, in other words, if your partner is not taking any personal responsibility for their role of why things happened, for their mistakes that they've made, if they never blame themselves, that's definitely a red flag. Now, I'm not saying you have to per se blame yourself, but you do have to take personal responsibility for your actions, what things you do, things you say, even if you feel that you're not necessarily in the wrong, so to speak, we can always improve and always do better. So if your partner never blames themselves and they're always pointing the blame at other people, whether it's you, whether it's somebody else that triggered them or made them upset, definitely a huge red flag for your relationship and something to address and take seriously, because that's a problem, because people aren't going to change unless they can really look at themselves and see what they did wrong and focus on that, right? We can't change what we don't acknowledge. So if we can acknowledge our flaws or our wrongdoings or our mistakes, how are you ever going to change that, right? So definitely red flag if your partner never blames himself for any wrongdoings. Number 5, it's a big red flag when your partner says mean things about your family or about your friends. I think this is a red flag because oftentimes this is a form of isolation. Whether your partner is doing this, subconsciously or not. If they're saying mean things about your family or mean things about your friends, that's a way of getting you to kind of pull away from your support network and your social circle that you rely on and that you need and appreciate, essentially. So just a red flag if your significant other is constantly degrading your friends and your family, because that can be scary, because you don't want your social circle to become your partner's social circle only. You need to have your own circle. You need to have your own friends, your own family, your own support network that you can go to for any type of reason, emotional and whatnot. But if you mesh your social circle only with your partners, that can definitely be disastrous, because if things go down, right? If you guys get in a fight, well, who can you trust, right? If you guys are all sharing the same friends, that can just get mucky. I'm not saying you guys can't have joint friends at all. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying it is important for you to keep your family close to you, to keep your friends who you had prior to the relationship close to you as well, to make sure that they're confidants and that you can go to people for support, okay? So just make sure that your partner is not saying mean or degrading things about your friends or your family, because that's a way to isolate you, and that's not good. Number 6. And a red flag is when your partner is telling you that you're overreacting when you're not. Do you feel crazy sometimes? Do you feel like, did I say something? Did I do something? Why is my partner, thinking I'm making a big deal out of this when I don't think I am? Well, I think that, again, that's another form of manipulation. If your partner thinks that you're making a big deal out of it, whether you're too sensitive, you're too emotional, you're, behaving crazy, whatever it is, just that is a red flag to do. If you're questioning yourself, if you're not sure what you did, but your partner's totally blaming you for something and telling you that you're overreacting when you don't think you are, again, I think another form of manipulation in the relationship, and that is an unhealthy dynamic to have when your partner is saying you're overreacting, because that's dismissive of your feelings and it's dismissive of your reaction. Instead of being able to meet you where you're at and resolve it, it's really dismissive, and it's really belittling and kind of degrading your feelings in the relationship. And essentially that's not good. Next. I think a big red flag is when your significant other is telling you how perfect you are. I use the word perfect, right? Because this often happens. You are perfect. I love you so much. I wouldn't change one thing about you. When our partners say we're perfect, okay, and they say it over and over again, oftentimes that means that they're putting us on this pedestal, right? And they love us so much and they wouldn't change one thing. I find this to be a red flag, right? Because if you make a mistake, which you will, if you have a flaw, which you do, if you do something wrong, which happens, right? Then that oftentimes, that idea of perfection that they have in their mind, just it explodes. Like they can't handle the fact that you're perfect. And then therefore they don't have a lot of wiggle room for you being human and making mistakes and doing things that maybe you shouldn't have, or things that you regret, or learning from certain situations. So it's just a red flag when your partner says and really admire you for being a perfect person, because you're not perfect and you're gonna mess up. And when you mess up and things go off the rail, like some of the things I mentioned in these red flags earlier, that's gonna happen, okay? So I just feel that praising you so much and putting you so high and saying how perfect you are is just a warning sign for you guys out there, okay? It's not saying your partner can't love you and love you for who you are and think you're perfect in your own way. But again, there's a difference between being perfect in your own way versus just a perfect person. There is a huge difference and something to be said about that. Okay, so I just want to throw that out there because that is important. Okay, I think another red flag in a relationship is when your sex drives are very different. This isn't something that I'm saying that you can't work on, but I do have to say that oftentimes when one person is super, super horny or ravenous and wants to do it all the time, and the other person, you know, doesn't care or doesn't do it a lot, it's just harder to find the balance of intimacy. Not saying you can't do it. I do think that there are ways to overcome this type of a thing, but it's something to really look into and focus on, because it is going to take a huge compromise on whether your end or your significant other's end to meet in the middle on this type of a thing. So I'm just saying, if one of your sex drives is completely different than the other, it's definitely a battle ahead. It is a road, it is a hurdles ahead in your relationship, and just something to be aware of, okay? And again, not saying you can't overcome it, but just something to consider. I think that another red flag in a relationship is when your significant other might refer to their exes as crazy. I say this because, not saying that people can't have crazy exes, right? But often just referring to a lot of their exes as crazy tends to put the blame on other people, right? Instead of themselves. They're putting their exes in a box, right? They're crazy. They don't know what they're talking about. You know, that is why I left him. That is why our relationship was so bad. That's why, you know, we didn't work out, because they're just crazy. No, that most likely that's not it, okay? Not saying people can't have that, but I would say a very, very low percentage has just crazy exes. I think that we all engage in behaviors with the people that we're with, and we engage in them, and we have to take personal responsibility for that. So when they say that, oh, my ex is just crazy, they're not taking any ownership of how the outcome of their relationship was. They're not taking ownership of the choices that they made, the actions they did, the things that they said. They're just putting it on their ex. And I think that is a big problem too, because we need to be in relationships with people that can take personal responsibility for the actions, and not just blame other people. Okay, because again, we want a healthy dynamic, we want a healthy relationship, so we need to be able to focus on that. And then last but not least, I think a huge red flag is when your partner makes you feel stupid. And again, this is that hierarchy, right? So if your significant other is saying you're stupid, or making fun of you, or making you feel that your opinions and your ideas are just less than, well, that shows that your significant other is not feeling like you guys are a team and you guys are a partnership. And instead there's a hierarchy. There's a platform of your significant other being here and you being down there. And you're not gonna feel respected. You're not gonna feel as important. You're not gonna feel as worthy if your partner is making you feel stupid. You don't ever wanna be in that type of a situation or a scenario. You guys are a team, right? You guys are a partnership. Nobody should be making anybody feel less than, feeling stupid, feeling disrespected. That's unhealthy. That is not good. So I just wanted to bring these red flags into light because they're really important to pay attention to. If you guys keep ignoring these, you guys are going to be going down a super unhealthy path. You're going to feel unfulfilled. You're not going to feel loved. You're going to feel hurt. Your anxiety is going to go up. You're going to be questioning yourself of like, what's going on? You know, why am I feeling this way in my relationship? You're just going to feel uneasy. And I don't want you to feel uneasy. I want you to feel happy, content, calm. I want you to know that you're loved. So if these red flags are happening in your relationship, these are things that need to be addressed, essentially. These are things that need to stop happening in your relationship in order for your anxiety and for your ability to be able to feel, you know, completely loved and accepted by your significant other. If you keep ignoring these things, your relationship most likely is going to keep going down this unhealthy path, and you're going to really, really have a hard time ahead of you and really, really struggle, okay? And I don't want that to happen for you. So I wanted to bring these red flags in light. If you guys have any additional red flags that have happened to you or are happening to your relationship, please comment below. Let me know what these red flags are. I think it's important that we share our experiences with one another. And if you have any questions about these red flags, please write them below. I'll get back to you as soon as I can, like I always do. If you like the content in this video, please subscribe to my YouTube page. If you haven't already, please feel free to share this video with whoever you think will find it interesting or valuable to them. And I will get back to you next time for my next video. Again, this is Kristin from KristinCoaching.com, and thank you so much for joining me today.